It's International Women's Day, an event with an over 100-year history and an annual opportunity to take stock of the progress, or lack thereof, towards gender equality in the workplace. No better time then to take a deep dive into Europe's biggest economy. Now, as you can see here, Germany is pretty middle of the road when it comes to gender equality, ranking near enough to the EU average. Sweden and Denmark lead the pack, with Romania and Greece performing worst. The ranking looked at jobs held by women, their pay, the positions of power they hold, as well as their health. So what is behind Germany's mediocre performance? Well, you can see it here. It has an especially big gender pay gap. Women, on average, earn 18% less than men. And that's partly due to the fact that women tend to work in lower-paid sectors. Efforts to tackle inequality are underway, though. Back in 2021, the government introduced mandatory quotas for women in corporate boardrooms. So has it worked? According to a recent study by the Boston Consulting Group, the portion of women on management boards has risen, albeit at a rather slow pace. Within the 100 largest listed German companies, only 15% of management board seats are currently held by women. And we can talk now to one of the authors of that study. Nicole Vogt is the managing director at the Boston Consulting Group and an expert in diversity. Nicole, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. Now, looking at those figures, 15% does not seem very impressive when you take into account that quotas are in place. Is it the case that companies just aren't complying, or are the targets not ambitious enough?
Well, thanks for having me. So, as you say, there is very slow movement. So Germany introduced the supervisory board quota already in 2016. And where we are now standing is at 35%. And we are not moving beyond the quota. The quota for the executive board, as you said, was introduced in 2021. And we are very slowly moving and now have 15%. And so this is not a big step forward. And besides, we have proven that diverse companies are more successful economically. They are more innovative. They rank higher on ESG ratings. But, it's very slow. However, there is a bit of hope. And you see from the 100 companies you mentioned, companies who rank higher, what do they do differently? And they offer flexibility in retaining their talent, offer better and quicker promotion opportunities for women, and they tag their diversity targets to bonus for the board members. And companies who do this actually move quicker, but I agree, 15% is not where we should be.
OK, and as you say, important to mention there are some good examples out there. But I want to ask you specifically about some research you did. You looked at the jobs network LinkedIn and at how men and women describe their competencies there, and the difference in how those competencies are then communicated in press releases. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about that research.
Yeah, sure. So we looked with artificial intelligence, so-called natural language processing, at press releases and LinkedIn profiles of similar peer group. What you see in press releases, so when job promotions from company are announced, so women get less get less tags than men. So men are usually described with 6 or more competences, whereas women on average are described only with 4 to 5. So we see a bias gap there. However, if you look at the same people in LinkedIn profiles, they describe themselves with an equal number of competences. What this tells us is there is still an unconscious bias in large corporations how they describe female top talent for the outside. And I think this we need to tackle, because on self-reflection, they describe themselves equally.
Fascinating stuff. Nicole Vogt, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, structural change might be slow to come, but that doesn't mean you can't try to redress gender inequality on the ground. That is exactly what one startup in Berlin has done. Taking into account that pay gap we've just been talking about, one co-working space has decided to charge men and women different rates.
This woman pays 19% less than a man for her space at a co-working office. It's a gesture of support from the company, since on average, women are still paid less than men.
I
think it's a big problem across society. Of course, it's a small contribution, but it's something that I really appreciate.
Sehr schätze an dem Coworking Space.
I think the 19% rule is great. For me, it's a sign from the owners of the space that we care.
Coworking Space, einfach zu zeigen, we care.
Men are outnumbered here, and they don't mind the different rates.
I think it's a nice idea. I think the whole space is trying to create a strong community for people, and if this helps get more gender-balanced representation, I think it's a good thing.
I don't think it's unfair. I mean, there's a pay gap, not just on the job, but across entire careers. So when you take a step back, I don't think that me paying more is wrong. Tuesday Co-working introduced the discount for women freelancers in 2021. It applies to 4 locations. The company says it's trying to be more socially responsible.
I guess Tuesday Co-working is trying to set an example to other companies to try to help end the gender pay gap, not only in Germany, but also worldwide. So this was sort of our way of telling everyone, hey, we're doing this, maybe you should all consider this as well.
The Equal Pay Day flag. Local politicians raise it in Berlin. Equal Pay Day symbolizes the fact that in purely mathematical terms, women work for free for the first 2 months of the year when compared to men, and the gap has hardly narrowed over the years.
Da spielen noch alte Rollenmuster.
Old patterns are still playing a factor here. Women aren't negotiating as well as men. Women often hide their talents and are more modest when it comes to job interviews. Role models are also very important, having women in leadership and mentorship positions. It's also about rethinking society. After all, typically male professions enjoy more prestige than professions dominated by women. This is the basic problem, after all, that social recognition is lacking. We've witnessed it throughout the pandemic. Without the social infrastructure, nothing works, but those same professions are paid much less. More recognition. Tuesday Co-working is taking steps. It's a discount for now, but Bendita Blattman hopes it will encourage other companies to rethink their own practices.